So the first video of our main schedule of all the information that I'm trying to get you guys about choosing if retiring overseas here in the Philippines is the best choice, and if so, how to go about doing it. We're going to start off with the research phase. I need to clarify, and this is very important, so I want to stress this a lot. This is the most important stage or phase, or whatever you want to call it, of your moving somewhere like here in the Philippines. If you do your research phase fully and properly, if you are able to sufficiently do all your research, make sure all the information is there, and really make sure that this is what you're going to want, what you're going to be able to do, then the rest of the whole process shouldn't be that complicated. This is probably going to be the longest part of it, because doing your research is so important and there's so many steps involved. Some of these steps you might have to repeat a few times just to make sure you have all the information down. So not only is this going to be the most important part, but it's going to be the lengthiest part of the process. And it's going to be the most critical in the beginning too, because this is really where you start to figure things out and you're getting all the pieces of the puzzle together, and then later on you're actually putting everything in order. So the first thing that we need to talk about is going to be critical factors. This is pretty much what I call anything that is an important factor that is going to play a role in you deciding if retiring overseas is even a viable option for you. And if it is, it's going to play an important part of where you decide to live, how you're going to live, and essentially what your life is going to be like once you move there. Critical factors are anything that is a big life-changing, or whatever you want to call it. So for example, if you are having medical issues, so if you have medical concerns, if you have really bad diabetes, if you had back surgery, knee surgery, if you have heart problems, any kind of a medical concern that might be something you need to factor into moving overseas. Your home country, you probably have a support system already set up. You have some kind of medical insurance. And because you're a citizen of that country, you probably have some type of emergency assistance, government assistance, or some kind of a program that if something just bad happens, you've got a way to deal with it. When you go and you travel or move overseas, you are not going to have a lot of those options available. Even if you're able to get some kind of health insurance that will cover you, it's not going to be the same quality of care, or it's not going to be the same level of coverage. There's just so many things that are going to be different. So you really need to look at any of your health conditions, medical problems that you have, and start thinking about, first off, is it even a safe idea for you to leave and move to another country with those conditions? If it is, if you think you would be able to find suitable doctors and quality level of care where you're thinking about moving to, okay. But you also have to think about once you get to that country and you start living there, how easy is it going to be for you? If you're one of those people that requires like dialysis treatments every week, you're probably going to want to live closer to somewhere that has a decent dialysis facility. You don't want to have to try and shuffle away to get 9-hour trip to a dialysis facility, especially if some kind of an emergency pops up or scheduling conflicts arise. And again, I do apologize for the loud fucking noise. It's just one of those things you got to deal with here in the Philippines. But those are some of those things that you really need to be thinking about. Another one is financial. My personal suggestion, don't ever consider retiring overseas unless you have a guaranteed 100% monthly income. If you didn't have like a big retirement pension or something like that, you're only on Social Security, but you happen to have tons of property, money in the bank, if you've got $250,000 or something like that saved up, You might be able to make it work, but the problem with that is a lot of people, they'll have a good chunk of money just in their savings, but they don't have a steady monthly income. And they just figure, okay, if I take this money and I break it down into, you know, let's say I plan to live another maybe 20 years. This money, if I break that down into 20, it'll give me this much per year, which I can break it down to this much per month, etc. They figure, okay, I'll have this much to live on per month. They use that kind of math and calculations. They don't factor in emergencies that might pop up. If all you're living on is a savings supply and that savings amount is not that much, there's a good possibility that if any kind of an emergency pops up, that's going to suck out years out of your living expenses, basically. You could find yourself in some very difficult situations, especially, you know, towards the end run. You might end up finding yourself broke. So I definitely recommend having a guaranteed stable monthly income. Another thing is, if you are going to be moving overseas and you've got property that you own in your country, you're renting it out to people and you're going to just try and use that as your monthly income. You got to realize that's not guaranteed. You might have problems with your tenants. The tenants might not pay you. Tenants might vacate. You might not be able to rent out that property. So there might be certain periods of time where your income is not 100%. Or you might have to have money out of pocket that goes towards repairing property, all those kind of things. If you have actual retirement pension, full on like Social Security, if you have military disability pay, anything like that that you can guarantee 100% no matter what, that money is going to be in the bank every month. That is my personal suggestion. Yes, you can gamble it and just try to live on your savings. You can try and do online work and try and use that to either serve as your primary income or at least a supplemental income, but I just don't recommend it. It's very risky. So you need to be thinking about your financial aspect as one of those factors. Do you have a lot of expenses or anything like that back in your home country that are going to be chewing away at things? Other stuff that might be coming up too is, let's say you, at some point in your past, you had felony convictions. You have a criminal record. Even if you are able to acquire a passport, you have to look at the immigration standards for the country you plan to travel to and really make sure that they're okay with you becoming a permanent resident or living there for an extended period of time with that criminal history. I'm not sure how that works. From what I have kind of heard is that people with certain felonies aren't even allowed to get a passport. There were a few things that I read, but I wasn't 100% on it. But with certain types of felonies, you could get a passport. The problem is certain countries won't allow you in with those type of felonies. Just different things. So you have to look at those factors. If you have any kind of child support payments that are due, obviously, even if you have a passport, they won't let you leave the country until the child support's caught up, all kinds of stuff. So if you have certain needs, dietary needs, for example, you have to eat a certain diet, you have to have certain foods due to medical concerns. Really, your critical factors are just could be anything that is going to play a major role in your deciding if you're going to move overseas, and if so, where. And when you decide on where, how are those factors going to play into your typical everyday life? I mean, there are just so many different things, and not all of them are negatives. Some of them are positives, in the sense, like, say you like to party, you like to drink, you want to be close to a bar. For you, living close to a bar where you can socialize with other foreigners or at least go out and have a drink, for you, that's a must-have. You refuse to live somewhere that doesn't have that available, even though the chances of something like that being somebody's critical factor is not likely, but it's just an example. It all depends on you. So you're going to have to really sit down and really think about all of your critical factors. You're going to have to list them out so that later on, as you're making different decisions, you're able to go back to that list to, work out more details of where and how you're going to live. Don't kid yourself. If you do have concerns that are serious concerns, if you're taking certain medications and not having access to those medications could be life-threatening, that's obviously a critical factor. You need to be thinking about that. And even if you think, okay, I've looked it up, these medications are available easily in that country, you still have to be thinking about what if the supply shortage, for whatever reason, gets delayed or cut off for a while. What alternatives do you have? Are you able to go to a doctor to get an alternative medication for it? Are you able to stockpile a certain amount of this medication before you leave for emergencies? So just figure out all of the different various factors that are going to play a major role in how you live, where you live. And let's be honest, for some of you guys, you really, really want to retire overseas, but that desire is kind of clouding your judgment a little bit. And there are certain factors in play that when you really sit down and honestly think about it, maybe it's not the best idea to go overseas with those factors. Maybe you should get certain medical issues or whatever, financial problems, get those things taken care of before you try to go overseas, where it's going to be a lot more difficult. So that pretty much will cover that. And again, these critical factors are going to play a key part of the whole entire rest of the discussion, different topics. This is going to be one of those most important points of your whole life from this point forward. That's why you start off with it, and that's why it's always going to be one of the #1 focuses.